So what I find so fascinating about this is when we think about anxiety, and as you mentioned, it's kind of a broad definition. I always think back to people, right? Because we are highly stressed. So when I think about this, in people, we think about medications, right? You can use there's several different anti-anxiety, antidepressant type of drugs out there. But when we think about pets, although we can go that route, there is a lot of side effects. So if we can find a natural alternative, like the blend of monoterpenes that we have in our Phytogen pet product, what we see is that we're actually getting an upregulation of serotonin.
Hello, and welcome to the Pet Food Science Podcast, where we will take a deep dive into the science, trends, and innovations shaping the way that we feed our pets. Whether you're a pet owner, an industry professional, or simply interested in learning more about what goes into your pet's diet, this space is for you. I'm your host, Dr. Kate Shoveler, a professor of companion animal nutrition at the University of Guelph in Canada, with a background in comparative animal nutrition and a passion for understanding how evidence-based approaches can improve the health and well-being of our animals and enhance our own lives. On today's podcast, we have Ashley Wagner, Director of U.S. Business and Technical Sales at Probiotech International, Incorporated. Today, we will explore the topic of stress mitigation and whether monoterpenes may be the key to reducing pet anxiety. Welcome, Ashley.
Hi there. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, it's going to be a really great discussion. You know that I'm super keen to explore the potential of these nutritional technologies to address a significant issue that affects the health and well-being of our pets, namely stress. But first, I would like to invite you to introduce yourself to the listeners and also a little bit about Probiotech International as well.
Great, thanks. So I'm Dr. Ashley Wagner. I have a PhD from the University of Kentucky, where I focused on protein metabolism in mainly skeletal muscle of horses. Following a short postdoc at the University of Kentucky in biology, I moved on to research manager at Cooperative Research Farms. And there, I was there about 4 years, and I oversaw equine, 1 year of poultry, and swine research for the organization. I joined Probiotech at the beginning of 2015, so 10 years. And for them, when I first started there, it was really for product development, focusing on establishing an equine line and then starting their business in the United States. Since then, I've kind of moved into more of a technical sales and management role. As you mentioned, I am the director of U.S. Business and Technical Sales. Probiotech International is a Canadian-based company. We've been in business for about 30 years, and the company really focuses on functional additives across species. And although we had focused on livestock as our kind of foundation, we have entered the pet space over the last, I'd say, 7 years. So the products are functional. They are additives that actually have some type of purpose in the body. Many of them are from natural sources. We are big on sustainability at our company and utilizing what nature can provide.
Probiotech International is driven by innovation, inspired by nature, and passionate about contributing to a more sustainable, safe, and healthy food system. We work closely with our customers to deliver solutions to current and future challenges facing the pet food market using natural active ingredients such as chemotypes and polyphenols derived from plant extracts and spices. Our products follow a rigorous scientific validation process. They are then proven to work through thorough field research, certified for quality, and then brought to market as a complete and effective solution.
Interesting. I'm looking forward to exploring these and some of the products that you have that can help mitigate stress. So maybe to start out, I think it's probably really important just to define what monoterpenes are and how they function in stress mitigation in mammals. Would you mind going through a little bit of that information?
Yeah, absolutely. So monoterpenes, it's just the definition of a type of chemical compound. So they all have C10 and 8, and so 10 carbons and 16 hydrogens. But some of them have terpenoids or ring structures. Others can be linear. So it's really just to define the compound class. Now, that being said, these are all compounds that are found in nature. So we can find them from many plant sources. But at Probiotech, we are really concerned with that actual function of that compound rather than the plant we're sourcing it from, because some plants may have a lot of something like thymol, and others may have a lot of something like limonene. These are two different monoterpenes that function differently in animals. So we have to understand A, what that chemical compound can do, and then B, what plants have a high abundance of that compound.
Interesting. So when we think about these products, Ashley, where, and you've mentioned plant products, so we know that they're all coming from natural and they're plant-based. Can you describe a little bit the process from kind of the raw ingredient to your products that you produce?
Yeah, absolutely. So depending on the product that we're talking about, it's going to vary slightly. But what you would do is you'd actually do an extraction process. So you might use alcohol, you might use a water extraction. There will be differences in temperature and time in order to obtain the compounds that we're looking for. So just kind of briefly, there is an extraction process, there is a distillation process, and you do have to crush the plant in that process. But based on the compound we're looking for, that process will vary. So for example, with some of our monoterpenes, it's going to be a little bit different than if we're talking about polyphenols. So again, it goes back to that actual chemical compound that we're trying to extract.
Okay. And what types of ingredients do you tend to use to extract these monoterpenes? So what's the base ingredient? And how many monoterpenes do you currently have in your portfolio?
Yeah, so we actually have quite a few. And again, because they have different purposes. And so, as I mentioned, our foundation in our company was livestock. So, understanding what is the purpose. And so, in the livestock industry, if we think about kind of how these products have been used, a lot of it stemmed from Europe banning, antibiotics as growth promotants. So what happened is companies had to find alternative sources for this. Well, this led a lot of companies, including Probiotech, down this road. And so we started looking at things like thymol or carvacrol, which are also monoterpenes, but their function is really more for gut health. So you have to not only understand what plants you can source it from, but also what's the function of that. Whereas if we're talking about stress mitigation, they're going to be different compounds. So, you might find something like linalool as a stress mitigator. And then what plants is that abundantly found in? So we do have a kind of a wide portfolio of our monoterpenes, and that's because we have products that are really tailored for different purposes. And that's where I go back to that. We're a functional additive company because we want to understand what is the problem in the industry, or in our case here, what is the problem the pet parent is facing? And can we provide a nutritional solution for that problem? And what compounds are the ones that we should source for addressing, again, that problem?
Okay, so when we think about anxiety in particular, and anxiety has a fairly broad definition when you look at the behavioral literature, which of the monoterpenes, maybe it's more so, how many monoterpenes do you have in the portfolio that help to specifically address anxiety? And in that case, what is the mechanism behind those monoterpenes actually creating a difference in the neurological profile of the animal?
Oh, I love this question. So what I find so fascinating about this is when we think about anxiety, and as you mentioned, it's kind of a broad definition. I, always think back to people, right? Because we are highly stressed. We are. I mean, there was a study that was done in 2022 by the American Psychiatric Association, that was just on how stressed Americans are. And in this study, they actually showed that 27% of people, and I might be off slightly, but it's around 20 something percent, were so stressed they could not function in their day-to-day lives. So when I think about this, in people, we think about medications, right? You can use there's several different anti-anxiety, antidepressant type of drugs out there. But when we think about pets, although we can go that route, there is a lot of side effects. So if we can find a natural alternative, like the blend of monoterpenes that we have in our Vitazen pet product, what we see is that we're actually getting an upregulation of serotonin. So serotonin is one of those neurotransmitters that, if you think about it, it's happiness. It helps with food regulation and with sleep. On the other side of the coin, if you're in a stressed situation, you are in fight or flight, right? And so if we go back to evolution, think all the way back to the dinosaurs, and I love this example because I actually used it with my daughter who does have anxiety. And so, when you think about the dinosaurs, if it was a smaller dinosaur and that T-Rex was coming after that smaller dinosaur, they had to prepare their body. Are they going to fight the bigger, dinosaur, or are they going to flee? And so what happens is there's actually an increase in norepinephrine and epinephrine when you're in these types of stressful situations. And with that increase, that's our fight or flight, that's our adrenaline. But on the other side, serotonin goes low. So that then leads to a systemic response. So if you think about animals, sometimes we'll see diarrhea, or we'll see them, right before they prepare to run away. Or with our pets, oftentimes it is a gastrointestinal upset. And that's because there is an axis from the brain to the gut and vice versa. And so with this, when we upregulate serotonin, instead of having that upregulation of norepinephrine and epinephrine, and we keep it more in balance during these stressful events, it doesn't signal the rest of the body to prepare for fight or flight. And it keeps them in a happier, a better wellness type of state of being.
Yeah, my lab has done a little bit of work, and we are definitely doing some work right now trying to look at anxiety as well. I think too, there's this part that there's the chronic release of cortisol, and in really chronic stress situations, which we are in, I think in general as a population. But I think that most people don't appreciate that because our pets share our homes with us, and we have such a close human-animal bond with the pets that share our homes, that if those are the statistics for us, those are the statistics for our animals as well. It would be very hard for all the people in the house to be stressed and the animals not to be stressed. So when you think of those of us who have children can use this example, but my son, if I start showing outward signs of stress, he starts showing outward signs of stress. And so it's kind of a whole family milieu in this case.
Absolutely. And so actually a trick that my daughter's therapist had taught her, and this goes back to that serotonin norepinephrine, so still at the brain level, before we've even gotten to cortisol being produced systemically, what she taught her to do was to take a pen and put it at the back of her teeth. And I'm going to do this, and I look absolutely ridiculous when I do it, but you'll see why. Okay, and to hold it for 30 seconds. Well, it's forcing you to smile. And if you hold it for more than 30 seconds, it starts to trigger the brain. And so again, it goes back to that balance between serotonin, norepinephrine, epinephrine, and then systemically cortisol. So our data has shown not only do we increase serotonin in the brain with this blend of monoterpenes that we use in Vitazen Pet, but also we see lower resting cortisol and lower cortisol in response to a stress event. And so we've shown this both we've shown it in dogs, we've seen it in poultry, so chickens, in cattle, in horses, in pigs. So it's really fascinating how it works across species, really regulating that rise in cortisol due to a stress event, which is going to lead to other systemic problems. Like, as I mentioned, diarrhea is one that, all of us pet parents have seen. When, the dog is stressed, we'll have that, or sometimes they'll have other gastrointestinal upset like vomiting, or just, shaking and behavioral responses. And so what also is really fascinating about how these monoterpenes work is because we change serotonin and norepinephrine, and then we have a lower cortisol, we actually have an impact on behavioral responses due to stress. And one of the primary reasons people will give up a pet is due to behavioral issues that they cannot fix, many of which may be stress derived.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And one that comes to mind, and I'm going to note right here too, that you didn't include cats in your research portfolio. So we're going to come to that in a second, because of course, one of the biggest reason that cats are relinquished is for inappropriate urination in the house, which most owners don't understand is likely due to stress. If it's interstitial cystitis rather than the formation of urinary crystals, as an example, and in the worst case, stones, the other urination problems are due to chronic stress in cats. And so you could, by mitigating stress in both dogs and cats, we could have a significant impact as well on unwanted pets, which I think is really important. And it can also improve maybe that original bonding experience. And I don't know of any research that has targeted that, but looking at intervening on adult animals that are going to a new home for adoption, because it's really critical that they do well in that preliminary period, because a lot of people will give up. Not me, probably not you either, but many people will just assume that they can't help the pet, and so there is really a need for these products. So, given that, my first question would be, why no cats? Yeah, and I like cats a lot.
Okay, so can I come back to the cats?
Okay.
Because I want to talk about that first time period when you're bringing a new animal home. So, your brain, whether that's a puppy or it's an adult mature animal that's been adopted. We have a trial that we actually published, not this past year. So 2023 Animal Science is where it was presented, where we were looking at adaptation to a board and kennel situation. So the dogs, again, dogs, but I'll come back to cats. I'm not forgetting you there. So the dogs had not been on any monoterpenes prior to coming to the board and train facility. So they started them when they arrived. And what we found is that they were able to adapt quicker for training and were able to go home sooner. So that is like a huge, again, that goes back to that behavior. So from what's going on physiologically and then how it's manifesting in the animal from their actual behavior side, that was a huge thing to see, because again, that initial time period is crucial. Not just bonding, but adapting to that new environment.
Yeah, I really hope that some people who are involved in working dogs and specifically service dogs are listening to this, because it might be a really great opportunity if you think about the success rate of service dogs in training. I wonder if it could improve the success rate, which would end up in more service dogs, which we need, and if there's a better success rate, then it would improve the financial model of those organizations as well, which I'm sure that they would welcome. I think the last time I looked at success rates of service dogs, it's quite low. In almost all cases, under 50% of the dogs that enter training do not make it. And I've definitely seen much lower numbers. So on the dog front, got it. Go on with cats.
Okay, so with cats, so we are working on a newer cat formula. Again, cats are not as receptive to all of these plants that we are obtaining these monoterpenes from, and so as a result, we're trying to pull from other plant. Again, where I go back to understanding what plant species you can obtain these monoterpenes from is really important. So we've gone back and we're almost through development of a new version that's going to be specifically tailored to cats. And as soon as that's done, again, this And again, we're at the beginning of the year. So this year, we plan on going forward in research with that newer product, with that same blend of monoterpenes, just extracted from different plant species. Because again, cats have some aversions that dogs don't.
Yeah, and I think we can all appreciate not only are they unique in their taste profile, but they're also unique in their physiological response. It's really fun being a researcher in feline nutrition, because at least I do. We often get surprising results, and then we repeat them, and so they're real, and you're left wondering, wow. Now you're different. Of course you're different. You're never the same cat. So they're going to be really interesting to bring these technologies in. So when we think about these technologies, there's a lot of I'm gonna put it in the natural bucket there. Natural supplements on the market. How do the monoterpenes differ from some of these natural supplements? And if you wouldn't mind, I always call it virtue signaling on pet food labels, where they do things like put chamomile and lavender. I think these are probably two big natural plant-based products that would be considered calming products, if you wouldn't mind kind of juxtapositioning them against those really kind of well-known products.
Yeah. So again, it goes back to, what is the goal and what compounds are we looking for, right? So lavender is going to have some of this, it will have some monoterpenes in it that are going to impact stress. So there is some basis there. It goes back to standardizing. This is the biggest problem in these plant alternatives, and I don't care what species we're talking about, but you can grow the same, and I don't care whether we're talking lavender or thyme or oregano plant. You can grow the exact same plant in the exact same field, and you are going to end up with different levels of all of these different terpenes. So it's very important to standardize and know, and we do this for all of our products. So when we extract, we actually test to make sure that we are utilizing and have a standard formulation of those terpenes, because that's what's important. That's what's adding the function to this. Now, some people and some companies may actually add in synthetics. We don't do that. So when we talk natural from our perspective, we will then obtain from another plant or add in more of those terpenes that we've pulled from a natural source. So that's one of the things, so when you just say lavender, well, it may not be the same active components from plant to plant to plant, again, grown in the same field. So that's really important. The other thing that we have out there is there's a lot of there are drugs that you could get from the veterinarian, but then we also have this whole field of these CBD type compounds that people are trying to use for stress. And I mean, to me, as a pet parent and as a scientist, what else could be going on, and how comfortable do I feel, utilizing something like that versus something that's got some really complex data that we have across species, both at a basic physiological level, but then also bridging all the way to that behavior.
Interesting. So then on all of the products that go to commercial, you guarantee the active is the other part that I'm hearing. And so you constantly validate your source and then how your process affects the concentrations of your active, and you ensure that you're always maintaining that level of active in your product. Yes?
Yes. Yes. And that's very important to us.
Yeah, because as you said, and maybe for the listeners, what this means to me as well is that there's one thing by virtue signaling, as I said, by putting lavender on your ingredient deck, there's another thing here of guaranteeing the monoterpenes from lavender are at efficacious doses in the form that you want to deliver it. And this is really, really important, especially as we talk about supplements and the kind of lack of control there is across, well, quite frankly, really bad in animal supplementation, getting better. There are a lot of groups that can help to make sure that supplements are, like the NASC, for example, in
Mhm.
the United States. But we do need data, and we do need that for every single SKU that you send out onto the market. So I really appreciate that quality that Probiotech brings.
Yeah, and it's especially important when we think about the supplements in the companion animal space, the equine space. There oftentimes will be products that have an active component on there, but if you go back to the original research, it might not be at the same level that they did the research on that active component. Well, and there's reasons that companies do this is sometimes it's too expensive, but then are you as the pet parent just wasting your money on a product that's not at an effective dose?
It's there's a difference between people who enter the market with a product hoping to make a quick buck, but not really doing the due diligence to ensure their product is efficacious, versus companies that are doing their due diligence to make sure that the product is efficacious. And I think obviously that if you don't have the money to do it right, then you should probably question whether you should do it at all.
Yeah.
It's time for our famous three.
So maybe one last topic that we haven't really discussed here. We've talked about the mechanism of action of monoterpenes from different types of ingredients, but what we haven't talked about is whether there's any potential risks or side effects that pet owners should be aware of when considering monoterpene-based solutions for their pets.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. A great question, and I kind of think back to, a for us, no, there aren't any. And what we really like, I love to show people. We've got actually some insect repellent trials that not for our stress mitigation, but just a different product. Um, and it's like this. These are concepts that have been around for thousands of years. The idea of utilizing plants is to mitigate stress, to repel insects. None of this is new. It's and so we don't see a buildup, or getting a tolerance to it. So like with you might have with medications and then have to up your dose. And so that is what I find fascinating about these plant extracts and using these monoterpenes. And I do relate that and I compare it to drugs. I mean, drugs have lots of side effects. And so if we go that route with our pets, what else are we causing other problems? So, I, really do find this all just such a fascinating area of research because of the wide use of these monoterpenes.
Yeah, I look forward to the continued research that you're going to do, and I can think of a lot of other areas where you have stresses combined with other comorbidities, where monoterpenes might prove effective with other approaches. So, thank you for sharing this information today. But if the listeners would like to pursue these as a potential incorporation into their products, whether that be supplements, treats, or foods, how can they get in contact with your team at Probiotech?
Yeah, so I mean, you can visit our website, which is probiotech.com, or you can reach out to me as well. My email is just my name, Ashley Wagner at probiotech.com. So feel free to reach out to myself or through our website, and I'd put you in contact with whomever you need to assist you further.
Fascinating. So, last but not least, I always ask people a couple soft questions. And so the first would be as a mid career female scientist in the pet industry, what do you feel is the most important piece of advice you could give to young aspiring women in the pet food industry?
So I think that's a great question. My thing is, don't ever think just because your long-term goal is pet, let's say, don't think what you could gain in another model. So equine, swine, it doesn't matter. The basic physiology and understanding and what they're doing research wise may just be ahead of what could be done in pet. So I think always keeping your eyes open and not looking at something as in looking at everything as an opportunity, because most of the time you're going to be able to find that if you add to the tools in your toolbox, it helps you further yourself in your career.
Great advice, Ashley. Ashley, thank you for that. And then last but not least, cat or dog?
Oh, so I'm a dog person.
Well, I like dogs too. As most of the listeners know, if they listen to the podcast that I host, I like cats, but I also like dogs a lot. And I think you and I also share a love of maybe horses and probably a lot of other animals as well. But horses kind of compete.
Horses are pretty high for me than dog. I'm allergic to cats, so it's not that I have anything against them. My body just doesn't like them.
Yeah, all those companies working on reducing cat allergens, you have to start to consider those products now. But Ashley, thank you so much for spending the time with us. The products are really interesting. So to yourself and all the listeners,
Thanks.